What are the rules? Can I cuss?
Oh, dude.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If you accidentally, it's accidentally. If you purposely, you purposely.
Could I say poop and pee?
Poop
That's
and
right.
pee.
All right.
Welcome to episode 10. That's how we start. We like to start the show highly candid, and we did that once again. Success. Episode 10, sponsored by Kohler Mountain Bike Preserve. We appreciate your support. We have Nick Shoulders.
Hi.
Woo woo.
What's up, bud?
You have me. Good to see you again.
We do have you. We have you here.
About time too.
About time.
Well, the man that's always on the road, so.
Not by choice. As we discussed, I think if I could make a living and be a dude that just shot arrows in his backyard and pet his dog all day, I'd do it. But unfortunately, none of us live in that reality.
Dude, that sounds like the life.
Yeah.
Precisely the life.
Which, not spoiler alert, but before I came over here, I may or may not have been shooting arrows up until the last minute. So.
Look, you know what?
Exactly.
And you were not late, so
I wasn't late by a minute.
That's crazy because I'm either late or someone else is late. It never fails.
And the fact that you got some arrows off, I'm stoked, dude. What nobody can see in this shot over here, but there's a cabinet here full of bows and arrows.
Oh, nice. Sick.
So I get down.
Probably real stuff too, because I'm shooting dorky traditional.
Dude,
longbows,
and horse bows and stuff.
Yeah,
that's cool.
No, that's cool.
I always want to take the ones from Cracker Barrel.
Yeah,
on the wall, that big longbow. I'm sick. I want that. But
people sometimes go into a Cracker Barrel and you're like, oh, I live in this life. This is what my house looks like too. Whoops.
Yeah. It's a sneak peek into the house of Nick Shoulders. It looks like Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, exactly. Whoever, I don't know whose job it is to get to go to the local antique outlets and outfit the freaking Cracker Barrels, but give me that job. Speaking of staying home and doing your job, give me that. Every Cracker Barrel in Arkansas will make sure it looks great.
Oh yeah. And everybody knows that look too. It's like when you go into a Cracker Barrel, it's like that oddly comforting thing. Like, why does this make me feel at home?
Fake grandma's house.
It is.
It's like
it is.
Every homestead or cabin you ever dreamed or read about, it's all there's a corner. I always thought it was cool. You take somebody and they're like, hey man, they have guns on the wall, and they're like, what? There's that one over the fireplace. Yeah.
It's like that one rusted black powder rifle that no one shot since.
Yeah.
Lord help you if you tried to shoot it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would actually like to shoot a longbow, but there's a lot more skill. It's recurve is difficult as it is, but longbow, it's you really need to have a real pull on it.
No cams helping you on that one.
Yeah, no little rollers.
I'm a
cam guy.
I'm a cam guy now. I need assistance in my pull. I got little baby arms.
So do you string it and unstring it every time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a horse bow too, which the horse bow is the Mongol hordes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got to kind of.
Yeah, whenever they created the largest land empire in human history, they were doing it with a bow that's that big.
Yeah.
On horses that were not much bigger than an Irish wolfhound.
and they conquered the world using that.
Really
so did. I mean, there's got to be something to it.
Oh, they fine-tuned that whole thing with the horse and bow.
Well, and you don't shoot on the left side of the bow. If you're shooting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so you're shooting across your body in what they call Mediterranean style archery, but with this Eastern style traditional archery, you shoot on the right side of the bow. So I didn't know any better growing up, and I made PVC pipe bows and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I just taught myself to shoot on the right because I was like, oh cool, Genghis Khan, I'm a nerd, I'll do that. And now I go and people are like, oh, you're into archery, and I'm like, yes, but, and then they stick a bow in my hand, I'm like, I can't shoot this thing because it's because I'm all ambidextrous or whatever on it and shoot on the right side. But it, so you're shooting with both eyes, and it's usually at a distance and stuff like that. So I've done a couple drills where I've shot full on, full draw, 70 yards or whatever, trying to aim with both eyes. And I'm like, aha, this is what this style is for.
Yeah, and also I think it had to do with they were shooting a lot on horseback.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something about the accuracy. Well, first off, if you're going to ride horseback, are you going to close an eye?
Yeah.
Well,
too bad.
Don't imagine you're going to do that. But yeah, I think you needed to kind of shoot that way. I never ridden a horse, so. Never, dude.
I've ridden a couple. It's fun. It's fine.
I've ridden some horses and some donkeys.
I
grew up around them, but I never rode too many of them.
Right. I would imagine that's sort of like a rite of passage, like playing country music. Like,
Got to be on a horse once.
Ride a horse.
you
Yeah.
have to ride a horse at least once.
Well, you've heard the phrase "all hat, no cattle."
Oh yeah.
That's country. That's like
that
the
phrase.
vast majority of country music is all hat, no cattle,
All hat,
all
no
boots,
cattle.
no saddle, if you will.
There
But
we go.
I see a lot of boots. That's right.
But
That's true.
this is a fun fact that the stirrup, on like a horse saddle where
Yeah.
you stick your feet, that was invented by horse archers. Because like before that, you just sort of like held on for dear life.
Clinched.
And, clinched. But when the horse archer scene started, they had to like put their feet somewhere. So to like stabilize and fire a bow, that's where the stirrup comes from. So
Dang.
like a lot of, I don't know, like horse riding technology, horse riding conventions have their roots in various types of mounted warfare. So there's your little
Yeah, it's a trip, man.
nerdy fun fact for you.
Literally, that's crazy to me.
That's crazy. Full circle conversation
I
right
knew
there.
that
Right there.
I knew that they, like you said, the Mongolians really developed the horseback and the warfare because I guess it's just open area there. They were just wide open, but it's like it's still kind of used today, or still some of it's still followed. It just
Totally.
it's a trip to me.
Yeah.
Isn't he like the father of like most of that area over there?
Some
He had like a big
the-
boom.
disturbing, violent, fun fact of history. Yeah, that
It's kind of like the equivalent to Thomas Jefferson over here. Like,
well, or like
something disturbing.
yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
king, one of the, there was a king in Europe, and he's responsible for most, I think, Caucasian people. And then
right.
there, you go all over, and it's like that all over the world. I think one person
Who was
started some
doing the most banging.
giant civilization things, and it,
Yeah, their bloody, awful, non-consensual course of destruction across history is borne out in the genetic code of millions of people. Yeah,
Millions.
Sort of sucks, but
yeah, but it is what it is. Yeah,
Never forget.
can't do much in the rear view about that. Unfortunately,
No,
That's
wow.
right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a trip. to me.
Stuck with the genes. Yep.
old Genghis.
Oh, Genghis. So we're doing this on Monday because you were just fresh off of tour.
Mm-hmm.
How'd the tour go?
Tour was fine. Tour was a makeup from this fall where I got sick on the road, which
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think everybody listening to this has gotten sick and not been able to go to work and had to call in. But ours means like catastrophic trickle effect of like canceling shows, canceling accommodations. No one gets paid.
And
Fans
also,
are angry. Yeah.
Trying to reschedule is like no easy
Right, I'm
feat.
sorry to say you can't just
Yeah.
turn. We'll be back in a week, and come
because those venue spaces, like they may have had that date open, but like if you're trying to reschedule that same run or even that same proximity of locale, might not make it in a cohesive tour run.
Totally. Way.
Yeah.
It bore out in the routing where I was like, okay, here's this meticulously months planned routing that like the booking people are so good at, and they put all this work into it, and like put a lot of logic and geography into all of our planning.
That's right.
And then it all becomes what night they've got available and where the promoter's head is at. And so like our route around was like bing, boo, doo, 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 just like 8 dates in this completely illogical, strange little loop that we did. But
it was like you had to do it to probably for the fans, I would guess, and then just to just to get that tour under the belt.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I'm stubborn. I don't like leaving people hanging. I didn't cancel those dates under like that wasn't a willful like screw you fans, screw you promoters, like
Right.
that was not a good time. And so like I think part of it for me and part of it for the band for sure is like the thing has to happen in the one sense of like, yeah, all these like people dependent on it, but like that's what we like to do, like that's what I feel I was stranded on this earth to do, is sing stupid songs. And so like when that can't happen, it kind of robs you of like a certain sense of pride. And so like, yeah, there's all the other stuff and like the logistical and like real life concerns of it, and then there's just like pride stings and like getting that like fun time and that like that like sense of purpose and stuff that you get out of that. Like being robbed of that feels pretty raw. So I think that like on one hand there's all the logistical considerations, on the other we just like to do it. And I think that like that felt important to be like, hey, I'm not I'm not some like soulless celeb that's gonna leave you hanging and like take your ticket dollars and then just go to my poolside estate. Like, I shoot arrows in my backyard and live in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I want to make sure that you know that I like give a damn about you people who paid for these tickets and paid for this show. So like, yeah, it was worth doing, but basically meant I've been on the road for the better part of 2 months. I got 3 days at home between our tours, and then just bopped out on this one. So yeah, getting more than a couple sequential days in my own bed is where it's at right now. That's my like low bar for feeling sane and human, is like, oh, I get to sleep in my own bed. Sick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least you're doing it for, like you said, like the plight of what you like, you feel like you put here for. And, I think there's also too, you touched on something about like identifying with that time out, that like that's your purpose. And I know that with work, like that's what I feel like, we equate our work, like we identify ourselves through our work,
right?
And this has become your work.
Yeah.
I mean I feel like, when you think about in terms of work, you've been doing this work for a long time, but it's become like your full time.
Sure.
When did that transition? Like, when did it go from
like, yeah, you're hella busy now. Time to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think, as it relates to Gnarkansas and relates to, the other type of work I do, which is visual art.
Yeah.
I was, if we were talking 10 years ago, like I was fully convinced that music was the side gig and that like visual art and graphic illustration
was the
and
front.
Like that was my front, and it was also like, again, how you mentioned like self-worth and identifying and stuff. It's like, I'm an artist.
You're
like,
an artist.
Even though that would make me laugh.
What am I first?
Yeah. What brings me joy? And like music was really hard then, and it's not like it's like particularly easier now. But like when you're in, punk bands, metal bands, hardcore bands, like just stuff that is generally confrontational and doesn't have like a monetary reward. It's not like I was playing in Thunder Lizards to get paid a bunch of money.
I love that we brought up Thunder Lizards.
Yeah, it was just me being as angry as humanly possible. So like I think that the transition from, I'm a graphic illustrator that plays music because this is what I really care about, and it's like a skill set I inherited. Like my grandparents sang and they learned to sing from their grandparents, so it's like this all like rural Southern singing tradition was an inheritance of mine that I think I was actively shelving, because what I identified as work and what I identified as like what could actually keep a roof over my head was graphic illustration, was the drawing and everything like that. But somewhere in the, let's say 2015-16 range, I moved into my van and I was like living off of busking on the street and like, selling some music and doing some art stuff on the side and some shows, but mostly I was like trimming weed and doing like awful little menial tasks to keep the gas tank full. And I think right around then I was like, you know what? This is actually your inheritance. This is like country music's literally running through your blood. Like you need to just like embrace this. And, for lack of a better way to put it, just like fake it till you make it. Like you don't know how to be a musician,
right?
You know how to be from Arkansas, you know how to sing,
right?
But you don't know how to like make this your deal. So somewhere in the 2016 range or so, I started like actually giving a damn about it and putting some work in, and that's 2017 is when I first put any music out under my actual name. So
nice. Yeah.
So I would say that like it took that of being like, cool, I care enough about this to represent it with my own physical being and my own legal name, and like again it like courses through my veins, so I'm going to like own it in this way that has up until now been like embarrassing or hard or awful. And so I guess it's been darn near 6 or 7 years that I've had music under my name out, which is a crazy feeling.
Feels longer than that.
I know.
Yeah,
it really does.
Well, because I think one of the in that short time you've made such a big name. What's funny, I'm happy to tell you this in person, that like you're that one person that I bring up that I know. I do know a few famous people, but
you're a famous person.
When I bring up your name, it's the one that it surprises me every time that
People
I'm like,
are like,
Nick Schullerson, like Nick, like Nick Shoulders?
That's hilarious.
And I'm like, yeah, that dude. I was like that. And so to give the people in Gnarkansas a little perspective, we touched on it a little bit, but you were one of our first like artists to do boards or graphics for boards for Arkansan, which one of them is right behind you.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, dude.
Astro-Gnar. Dude, I loved that one.
No, just spotting the little like variations on designs and the stuff. I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad the stuff gets to live on, because like
it lives on. Yeah.
And again, like we were probably going to get to this at some point in the podcast or another, but I have a spinal deformity. I can't really run. I'm bad at sports. But when I was like, when I was 13 or something, I like got completely sucked into being like adjacent to skateboard culture and like wanting to skate, but not being able to because I physically couldn't do it.
Right.
And I remember bombing a hill on my like the back half of my parents' mountain, and I fell and like scraped up my hands, and I was like, oh damn, I like really hit I screwed up. I was going real fast, and I like went home and sat on my drum set and just stared at my hands and then stared at the drums, and I was like, I can't do that. I can't play drums. Yeah, so I was like, I guess I have to pick a team. But
no, totally. That's exactly what happens.
But they inform themselves or each other so much. Like so many of my favorite like punk bands and just like music in general I've gotten from skate videos over the years.
Its connections are crazy.
Yeah, it is.
They overlap a ton, and like I even think about something like the Cramps that like took me from like, okay, cool, I'm learning about this era of 70s punk, but I'm also learning about like rockabilly and obscure rhythm and blues and like weird country music and all the stuff that they covered, because the Cramps catalog is about 89%.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's 89% reference. Like they're mostly covering
He tells
stuff.
a good story, or he can just
It's all like it's all buried back there. And I started listening to the Cramps because of Baker 3, you know, like stuff for that where it's like it all just sticks in there. And so I always wanted to be associated with skate stuff in some way or another. I wanted to skate and couldn't. All my friends were good at it. And then the like window arises of like, oh, I can learn how to be a graphic illustrator, and I could do this, you know? And so it was the opportunity you gave me to be a part of Gnarkansas' early days, like that was really, really, really cool to me. And I still go into some people's houses and they've got my like, you know, deck design in 2013 or something that's still in plastic on the wall.
Actually, look at Brad's shirt right there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a golden
That's
oldie.
another one.
Yeah.
I should have brought all the old used ones up. The
honestly,
animals that I had the animal ones.
A lot of them are here. I would just, I'm a bad host and didn't like bring all of it together. But it's like in this room, in this building somewhere.
Seriously, I could have brought some old boards that had all the animal series.
The animal series was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish we had. Ended up calling it unnatural.
Unnatural.
Yeah, because we were leaning into the natural stuff, and it was like, all right, they're disgusting.
Stuff.
They're like zombies. We talked a little bit about what they were.
Right.
I even remember we were like, what animal are they? And one of them, you were like, I don't even know what it is.
Like, I just drew it.
I just drew it.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of like I remember the one you're talking about, sort of just like the like generic canid, you know?
Yeah, but I think we ended up calling it a possum.
Yeah.
You know, or
Yeah.
no,
Possum
or
works.
it was a bear. Dude.
I just remember the raccoon for sure.
Yeah, the
Right?
raccoon's easy to spot. The possum, I feel like, is
the
easy to spot
hog.
because the hog is extra easy to spot.
Yeah.
But I feel like the possum had like black tips on the ears or something. Where I was like,
it was brown and yellow.
Brown and yellow.
Brown and
Okay.
yellow. It was the
You're right. It could have been a bear.
Could have been a bear.
Could've
Could
been
have
a
been a possum.
Could have been a possum.
the bear one. That one was like blue and red.
I thought
That
the
makes
hog
sense.
was.
It was blue and red. The hog was blue and yellow.
Oh, there you go.
Blue. Yep.
Y'all might have a more distinct mental image of this stuff
Dude,
than I do at
it's-
this point, because I just have to like spin them out and then they evaporate. And
That is how you provided me art. You're just like, here's a bunch. Here, just
Use some of this
do
stuff.
something with it.
Which, you know, I am not a professional graphic illustrator or graphic designer, and it is funny to like look in the rearview and I was like, Brandon was very tolerant of all the like giant AI files I sent over there.
We just made it happen with whatever it was, and I mean, like even that one, I remember the shirt. I had to take. We did the GN on the nose and the AS
it was
on the
split
tail,
somewhere.
ass on the
oh,
tail,
amazing.
ass on the tail.
And then you had to bring it back.
Yeah, and then I had to like take it apart and put it back together, and then we made a couple of different runs because at that time I think it was when you were transitioning. I think you were.
No, totally. was like, we were doing it and we are like, man, he did our art and he's like blowing up right now.
Yeah, and you were gone. I mean, you were gone
out at that point.
I was gonna say New Orleans or in the van probably. Yeah.
Yep. And so like it was like, all right, well, I'm gonna start kind of like reforming the art but quite honestly, that era is really what defined Arkansas. It really did. I mean, it was a highly
important
definitive
to me too.
moment.
You know, it's like
nobody was doing anything. Our scene was kind of that wasn't down. It was just slow or quiet, and
it was more
and
more
so
quiet,
it was really cool to. It kind of like you said, it just came out of our scene, and you were gone at that point. I think it was sick though.
But also too, like it's funny that you bring up skate adjacent because like your art was like hands down. When I saw it, I was like, this has to be on Gnarkansas. Yeah. This is Gnarkansas. I remember telling you that we were it's where Kingfish is now.
Oh, that bar?
Yeah, but it used to be at Skate Spot a long time ago. Remember that? We used to bring all the ramps to that
parking lot right there?
No, like Walton Art Center.
Right.
Walton Art Center, and then it's like across the street. The bookstore, behind the bookstore.
Yeah.
Behind the bookstore.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, Kingfisher is behind the.
Yeah, and that used to be it was a empty lot for a while, and we would skate there.
Oh.
Man, you don't remember that?
Man, it's been a while.
You're supposed to be our archiver.
I know I'm supposed to be the archive skateboarder.
Jeez. Anyways, we and you met, and I remember telling you, I was like, your art, like it has to be with Gnarkansas stuff, and we made it happen.
We made it happen.
I'm so stoked. It's like one of the it's weird how that one time created so much memory and so much identity for the brand that like dude, eternally grateful.
Hey, it's a two-way street because again, I was so green. I just dropped out of college and was not like I wasn't stoked on much. You know, it was kind of a rough spot for, I think, you know, you mentioned the scene was kind of down with skate, and I feel like that was also true of the like
music
of the music world that I belong to, where like a lot of us were just kind of coming out of our like teens and early 20s, and we're like, okay, how do we go from like that version of angry to the version of angry that you'll hear on like these bigger, louder bands? And like over the course of that next 5 years, like so many great bands came out of Fayetteville and like were active, but it took having that like ideological and visual core to it. And I feel like I saw the skate scene blow up around it, and I saw like just a lot of stuff that deserved a face. And you know, like I don't want to take too much credit for that because I feel like it sets itself up. Naturally Gnar and Arkansas, you know, like
right.
It's like it's got everything associated with it you need. But like I'm just such a like over the top believer in Arkansas, and like we're all aware of this. I mean, like we
this
like
is
this
a big group of people who believe in Arkansas.
Yeah, truly care.
We're Fayetteville kids.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, and I remember moving up here because I'm originally from the sticks outside of Little Rock, like, you know, dead end gravel road situation. And getting up here, I was like 7 years old, and I remember being grateful for Fayetteville, and I was just like,
dude,
Fayetteville, it's got a lot going for it. Like this is a place that like is really you're able to do stuff in a state that's like it's really hard to do stuff. And I think that like that DIY ethos is neat if you're in Anaheim, it's neat if you're in Portland, it's neat if you're in Baltimore, but when the DIY ethos means you literally have to like draw this stuff out of the dirt and the woods of a place like Arkansas that doesn't have like, you know, a couple generations of people playing punk music or skateboarding, that really I think has like so much more work behind it and so much more spirit, and you have to believe in the place so much more to do that. So like I was just glad that same effort that I could put into music and art and stuff like that ethos was also informing the skateboarding, and that meant the world to me.
It totally was, because I think that one of the things that, and this is, I feel like this is often overlooked, but like when you work with skate adjacent, especially music and art, any art, when it's skate adjacent, it naturally works every time. And I'll use an example of Thunder Lizards.
Okay, cool.
So every single time I took Thunder Lizards song and put it to a skate edit, I was like, this is the one.
It worked.
This is the one. This is the one I have to use. It's perfect. It's perfect every time. And I mean, like, that was a short run, wasn't it? The Thunder Lizards time.
I think that band, we put out an EP, and there's one that's recorded that doesn't exist on the internet. There's one song from it that's out there. We'll have to go bother Nick Futch about that.
Let's do it.
Totally
Nick.
possible.
Nick, please give it to us.
I was gonna say, if you're out there,
Nick Futch, please.
But it was a short run, and for those watching or listening that never experienced that band, it was, we were something close to a really loud joke. Like I couldn't play guitar.
That's great.
Literally,
great.
When I mentioned 2016, 17, I was like, I was starting to write songs and put them out on my own name. That was when I tuned a guitar to standard tuning, like everyone's supposed to when they're 16 and they first pick up an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And I missed that whole phase of life. So it took me until my late 20s to be like, okay, cool, I'm going to tune a guitar to standard. But Thunder Lizards, I was playing in open C and with a slide, and it just kind of sounded like boots in the dryer, like
definitely did.
It's like surf punk Motorhead. And that band was such a an Arkansas thing, because even if we were playing this speed metal bar party time pizza punks, just kind of dumb fast fun music, we still couldn't wash the red clay off of it. We had slide guitar,
right,
and we sampled Almeda Riddle in between songs, and it was meant to reflect this place as much as it was to reject it, because I think that's kind of the big thing that people misconstrue about skate and punk stuff, and in general just alternative lifestyles, is that it's in rejection of the circumstances it's created in. And I totally
celebration.
I don't buy that at all. Yeah, it's supposed to
celebrate.
It's reacting to, sure, but it's meant to enshrine and maybe reject the parts of that are incompatible with fairness, or treating people well, or loving yourself. But I think that rejecting those aspects of the South, there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody should be interfacing with that spirit to some degree or another. But all these art forms that are quote unquote rebellious are doing so because they really love the place that it's coming from. If we didn't love Arkansas, we just go somewhere else. Right. we go play punk music in Baltimore. But
and we sure wouldn't carry the influence that comes from us, and promote it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of Texas rap, they're so proud of their place. I'm from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost every song says something about
Texas,
I'm from Texas.
Yeah.
But it's I feel like that here. And when I was talking about putting your songs, and even going into I would say the OK Crawdad stuff,
mm-hmm.
or your self-titled stuff, it was always really easy to put it to skate because it was skate adjacent.
Right.
But it was also Arkansas flavored.
Right.
And so that's why I say it was so easy to put it to an Arkansas edit, because it was well, this goes hand in hand.
I love to hear that.
It really, really did.
I just like how the late 90s, early 2000s and on were just Fayetteville was just so full of and rich to me of not another culture, just whatever organically was going on. I moved here in the mid 90s, and I was I don't know, it was just a feeling, and I stayed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just all this stuff just naturally happened. And like you said, I came from a small town. I'm rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get here and I'm there's nothing to fight against.
Yeah. There's nothing to fight against.
It was a great way to put it.
You know what I mean? There's none of that. There's no good old boy network. And it was and at the time, everybody would leave in the summer, all the students,
mm-hmm.
everybody. And it was just locals. And that was the coolest thing.
We call that the Texodus.
And they were gone.
Because they all go home
and
to Dallas.
Gone. And immediately it's all right, we're all going to the lake. We're going to rivers. We're all house parties, or we're still having shows.
That's funny. Yeah. It was always when everybody left the Texodus.
Yeah.
We're all right, let's party.
Exactly.
That's when the house parties popped up.
I was going to say, there are some legendary Gnarkansas heavy music crossover parties that we would have out in Hog-Eye, which
Yeah.
I'm sure
Oh,
you can recall a few of those.
Yeah.
But like, I just remember there was one where Cowards was playing inside, so there's just like the scariest sludge metal humanly possible being played in someone's living room. You go out the back deck and people are jumping into the like science experiment above ground pool that like has been abandoned for the whole season, and like the water's opaque, and then you look out to the dog cages and there's people skating, and I was just like, this is
Arkansas.
this is my alternative.
That's right.
Like this this is my not a church or a Trump rally Arkansas. Like this is what I think this place actually is.
For sure.
And those moments, I was freaking like 17, 18 at those parties. So like that stuff being able to be our like reference point for what is possible in a not just small town DIY scene, but like in the shadow of all the incredibly hard, violent history that this place is built on, to just be able to be like, here's our joy. This is our little act of rebellion, and we're going to like stick with it. Like the fact that shines through any of this stuff, it does mean the world to me, because I, like maybe people listening, don't always have entirely positive feelings about trying to exist in this place, and like and everybody has to check reality, be like, boy, I love black walnut trees and hills and rocks and stuff, but sometimes I wake up and it's hard, and to knock some of the edge off of that's a big deal.
Well, I think I think that I've said this recently in just like general conversation that reality is what you make it, and in a separate conversation, I've also brought up this concept of, if you don't like something that's going on in a place, but you like that place, you can just create your own network in your own subculture, and I think that we proved that, and I mean, not that it's like massively huge or anything. Like, I know that we're not like, all the stuff that we do isn't chart topping and whatever, but it's like, I'm completely proud of everything that's came from Arkansas. You know what I mean? Like this place is like, when it comes to skateboarders, to music, to even its growth, I think is tough. We could probably talk a lot.
We can bitch about that.
We could complain about that. But ultimately, like, we love this place, and like it's so easy for like Gnarkansas to promote. Like, we're so it's so natural, because it's like, yeah, I love this place. Totally. Like let's promote.
I like when
that.
people are like, Arkansas. You're like, yeah, like Northwest Arkansas, and they're like, what do you mean? And you kind of explain it to them. They're like, that exists there? Like, it is this little enclave in the hills that's just a little different. Like, coming from small town, I felt like, everybody was like, this place sucks. It's all glass half empty, half empty. And then you come up here and it's like, all of a sudden, glass half full, and everybody's stoked. And like, I've always had that vibe about Fayetteville area.
Well, and you brought up something really interesting too. I was thinking about is like us being Fayetteville kids, right? And we all grew up in different generations of Fayetteville.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I wonder, like, for me, came from California straight to Lincoln, Arkansas, like meth capital USA. I feel like in a lot of instances,
you used to have apples.
They did have apples.
I used to stop in there and get a little glass every once in a while.
Dude,
man.
Appletown! Shout out to Appletown.
I had a delivery job out there delivering bottled water, and I would stop in there in the summers.
The Apple Festival was the other thing, and they had the Apple Festival.
They still do that.
You would fit in so well there as a book.
We love Cane Hill
for that. Cane Hill.
Yeah,
that's right.
We did the Cane Hill Festival a couple times. Yeah,
wow.
Cane Hill is sweet.
I would love to come to that show. People who know me know that I do not go to shows as a show professional. I hate shows, but I will go to that.
Cane Hill is a blast. You got the buzzard. What I think? Oh, it's like Loping Buzzard Old Man Gospel Band or whatever. And like they've got the mule. They've got a mule on the like the churner, the like giant thing, and they're grinding up sorghum cane to cook molasses right there on site. So they're like bottling and handing out the like jars of molasses while we're like playing grandpa music.
Let's go.
At the oldest chartered college west of the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
It was going to be the U of A for the beginning.
Yeah, and it was the first college. It could be west of the Mississippi, but maybe in the South, maybe in the U.S. to admit women. I think in like the 1870s. So they were like pretty cool out there.
Pretty progressive.
Pretty cool out there.
Oh, That's freaking great.
Fun fact about Cane Hill.
Yeah. Not Lincoln though.
So I said
Lincoln's
Cane Hill's
the opposite of all
Yeah, I
that.
was gonna say Lincoln's got his moments.
I hope
they're
it's
real
cleaned
close.
up its act.
They're closer to Oklahoma. That's the problem.
When it's possible. I've been gone for a while. Anyways, Lincoln was horrible. Coming to Fayetteville though, Fayetteville was like transformative for me because it was like big town energy, small town vibes.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
What's that phrase that was getting passed around? Big enough to matter, small enough to be somebody, or something like that. I think that was something people were saying in like the mid 2000s, and I remember thinking like a goofy sentiment that means so much and is super real.
Yeah, sure.
It's like deeply
It's
real,
goofy,
you know?
but it's deep.
Yeah, it's actually
hard.
true.
And I mean, I think we probably all saw little bits of that of like this man, I can be me here.
Totally.
I don't know, like, if I ever felt that in another place, you know? And then, I mean, you know, fast forward that, you know, spawning into creating whatever this subculture is that's been created. I don't even know if we call it a subculture, but
Fayetteville is a subculture.
Yeah.
Fayetteville itself, yeah.
Because even if you leave and you go up to, nothing against any of the other cities around like Springdale, Rogers, it's not Fayetteville.
No, it's not Fayetteville.
Yeah.
It'll never be
Right.
Fayetteville.
Yeah. And also in those times too, I think there was a lot of meat being generated. You know, it was like stuff that I feel like had some real tangible memories to it. And I mean, again, no offense to any other cities around here, we love y'all.
Right.
But Fayetteville seemed to be that place where even and I mean, people from Bentonville would say it. They would say like, "Oh yeah, we want to come down to Fayetteville, hang out with y'all or something."
Yeah.
You know, come to Dixon. You know, Dixon was always the big draw too.
But it was different then.
It was different.
Now it's loud. Yeah. Dixon is loud and
Oh, it's
doesn't
weird down there.
It's not. It doesn't feel very locally.
Oh, it's
I
weird
hate
down
to
there.
dog on anybody down there, but it's
Yeah.
a lot different.
The last time because I used to busk down there, like
Oh,
playing
yeah.
on the street corners all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
And I
All the time.
remember I'd been gone for maybe a year, and we were heading back out. I was living in my van at Santa Cruz at the time, which is how I got the like trimming jobs and was like living on the beach and stuff. And I was like, this is not that bad. This is fine. It's also
do
like
this.
the Fayetteville of California. I figured
Yeah.
out. So that was I didn't last very long, but I liked it. But
That's true.
so we were busking out there, and it was like 2 days before the 2016 election, and we were playing old time music, rolling in my sweet baby's arms, freaking banjo, fiddle
Yeah,
stuff, and
yeah.
like making a little bit of money, but we're all so sick. And I remember just being like, we just have to make enough gas money to get out there. Like we just gotta go. And there's this truck blasting up and down Dixon with like a bunch of frat boys with a rebel flag screaming Trump, 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 going up and down.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, now I really feel like I'm
not as sick.
I'm trying to go a little bit faster. But like, I just remember we were like about to give up and totally dejected. And then out of the blue, this $50 bill lands in the case. And I was like, well, that's more than enough to get home. We get to leave. And I look up, and it was one of the cowboy hat frat dudes with the rebel flag. And he was just like, I love it. And like went along, and I was like, boy, that's just this place.
Yeah.
Like,
It is.
you're
right.
For every
You're
step
right.
up, there's like a step and a half backward, and like you just kind of have to roll with it. And I feel like that keeps us, you know, despite the fact it's a university town with some like relevance outside of here and some like, you know, subcultural stuff that has arisen, like you still get checked in this way that's super real. So like I will say, like, compared to, you know, our surrounding equivalent scenes, not just like the Rogers and Bentonvilles of this world, but like the Austins and St. Louis, the KC Mo's, you know, like places that have long-standing vibrant scenes, they don't necessarily have to run up against that reality that often. They don't have to like look in the mirror and be like, I am that good old boy in an alternative future. You know, like I'm that dude if some very key things had not happened in my life to like steer me towards this subcultural identity. So I think that's something that I've always respected about Fayetteville is like, yeah, it's this little shining light of relevance, but we also still are 20 miles from national forest. You know, like we're from some very, very remote places that are nearby, and like some really startling, insane inequality that's baked into the way that people have to exist here. And I think that keeps us real in this way that I'm super proud of. We're like, I don't, you know, I maybe could be happier or better paid if I lived in Nashville, but I wouldn't have the same like pitch and pull between like the subcultural bubble that I get to live in and the like confronting this aspect of self that's like intrinsic to this place. That's part. I grew up in this town, going mudding at lunch break at FHS. You can't, like I said about thunder lizards, you can't wipe the red dirt off of it. Like we are who we are, despite the fact that like we get to participate in these like alternative lifestyles. So I do think that that's another thing that makes this area brilliant, is that we do have to like be real about shit in a way that like people in other places don't necessarily have to or choose not to. You know?
Yeah, I always felt that way about Fayetteville. Like, you can go, we're in the Bible Belt technically, so, other towns, people feel a little oppressed by some of that sometimes, especially subculture. Mm-hmm. But every time I came up here, I always felt like both sides were like coalescing to create this, and it was like you said, it was kind of like a reality check. Like, I'm not just living my bubble. I turn around and I have to deal with whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that was, like you said, it was pretty real and organic. So
yeah, I wonder if a lot of that did have to do with it being a college town.
Yeah. I'm sure that a fair amount. And I think that's also like you drew the distinction between like the Bentonvilles and Rogers and here. And I think that that's always been the long-standing like difference, is that Springdale had industry. It had the train yard and like a few. Like there was obviously the poultry industry, which we're not going to get into that. Yeah, we don't have to. But like just aspects of local economies that were based around ag or quote unquote industry and stuff like that. And Fayetteville's economy was all based around the university. So like all the jobs you could get, all the like, the things that you could do and function as on the day to day, all really centered around the fact that like a lot of young people were in this weird spot in Arkansas for like this very express purpose. And so that's where I'm like, yeah, no shade to our northern neighbors up in the flats, but like, Walmart can build all the company towns they want, but they're never going to have the like organic sort of scene that like a Fayetteville creates. And so like I think that like
they're trying to create that feel.
It's like Reaganomics culture, where they're like, well, let it trickle down your back or whatever. And it's like that's not how subculture works. But good shot.
There's I don't even know what it is, but it's like a meme Bentonville page, and
they did themselves.
A stencil. There's a stencil that somebody's been putting around town that's like, you can't buy culture.
Yeah,
I think is what it is.
I think that's exactly what you
sent
that to me at one point. I was like, damn.
It's amazing what money can't buy is something I like to say. And I think that like you can't buy culture thing is the exact same sentiment of like.
I think you see it when you go up there, and I'm not dogging anybody. You go up there and there's just competing groups and for clout and like it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be that way at all.
I think people new to this area, I think, have a different viewpoint on what maybe we fell in love with in Arkansas back when. Mm-hmm. And I'm this is total just theory here, but what the part that I fell in love with in Fayetteville that we've touched on doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, the town I grew up in's gone.
No, it's
so clearly they're not coming for what we're talking about.
Sure,
they're coming for I would maybe say the natural beauty and the fact that this isn't as populated as other places.
Sure,
that's my guess for now until
we'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Well, until all of them come.
Well, and here's to expand on that point, because I definitely like have had to check myself or be checked by friends who are like, hey, I hear what you're saying, and did you consider the perspective that like someone moving here, whether it's now or then, especially now, I think, who, let's just pick out of the blue, like you're a kid from suburban somewhere, and like it's mostly concrete and it's mostly like planned parks and planned neighborhoods and interstates, and like that, like, wouldn't you, if you were that person, want to exist somewhere that like has access to nature, a quality of life that's decent, and you don't have to look over your shoulder all the time for like that oncoming vehicle or that like sense of impending doom? Like I get it, especially having like I didn't spend a ton of time outside of this state until pretty late in the game. Like it took me a minute to get out and to find out what I liked out there. And I will say that that's what's kept me coming back, is like what this place offers in terms of like proximity to nature, to realness,
Yeah.
And like, again, I don't fault anybody for wanting that. So like I have to catch myself, and I feel it, what y'all are saying, like where you have the like, man, this place is going to be a small city any day now, and like we're basically just like University of Texas at Fayetteville and all that, and it's like that can all feel pretty raw, but at the end of the day, like even if it's not the exact same reasons, I see people's humanity in wanting to exist in this quality of life, and so I welcome anybody who's looking for it, and also just like, I want to remind everyone that there was not an interstate highway running through Northwest Arkansas. Until the year 2000. I don't think people realize, like, I was 11 years old before there was any way to get to Central Arkansas that wasn't the Pig Trail or 71. And so like, I know y'all are in a different generational strata than me, but like just having that same thought of like, y'all don't know how quickly this happened.
It was actually kind of remote for a while. Like, I mean, you couldn't just come up the Pig Trail without getting stuck behind a diesel and it taking extra time or something.
Well, like we live in an area where like I clearly remember roads being dirt. Like I had many roads around here that used to be dirt that are not dirt anymore.
So my parents' road dead ended in dirt, and where we lived on Ghost Hollow. And I was like, cool, we're on the edge of town. And by the time I graduated high school, I was like, I'm in the middle of town.
Sprawling suburbia.
Exactly.
Sprawling suburbia.
Well, I think it's fun to throw that word around, but having now like traveled a lot, I'm like, we don't have an herb.
Oh, you're right.
It's hard to be a suburb without an herb.
I will scale back on that.
No, it's cool. Yeah. I use it too.
Yeah. It's because I think that we're trying to make that feel. We're trying to like, attract that. And somebody is. Not we.
But it's one of those things. We're almost that, but not quite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I guess all this, I kind of do want to kind of package this a little bit where it's like I guess what we're saying is, we do welcome newcomers, but it's more like respect what you're coming to, because I've said it before, like, we want you to come, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I cringed when Bentonville was like, "Move up here and we'll give you a bike."
Yeah, it's like, oh, don't tell everybody. Tell a few.
And now we got
a few people.
We got the influencers out there giving away all our little honey hole spots, our little swim spots, and our waterfalls.
The influencers.
It's like, but then I do see some, and it's like, hey, I went to Triple Falls, and I was like, that's the most basic, easy one. You're not really I don't know.
They're basically going to build a gondola to that eventually, but
oh, dude, absolutely.
No, I think that I like what you're saying. Like, we welcome you, but do recognize that like a part of the like cultural basis of this place is a lack of access to American suburban homogeny. Like, we have not been American suburban homogenized. And
I want dirt roads.
I was gonna say, I truly do.
Like, I want to be in that environment. And I know you can't have it forever. I know it's kind of like you can't have your cake and eat it too, because we do want growth. We do want, better pay, and to get better pay, you gotta grow. And so we want these things. So like, I don't want to be the hypocrite in that. I think it's more like, let's celebrate this natural state
instead of being ashamed of it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, dude, we could go. There's like all the talk about the buffalo, the development around the buffalo.
Oh man, that stirred up the locals.
I was gonna say that's a blood boiler.
Yeah, I know.
Have you been down and seen the parking lot they put at Cowles Landing?
Like, apart from the one that was already there.
Okay, so you know how you come in, you turn right, and they got all that like tall pine trees, and you camp underneath them. They stuck right where those trash cans are. They took some of the wood down and they put like a gravel parking lot in the open area, and a lot of people they're like, could have put it anywhere else. Like, I don't know, man.
Well,
and people are not happy about that particularly.
There's more that I know that I'm not well educated on, but there's a podcast called the Ozark Podcast, I think it's called, and they've shined light on it often. And I think they bring people on that are...
Yeah, I think they're making them shuttle out now. You can't leave your car down there. And just like when you get done, you jump in your car and leave. Now you have to get in, wait on the bus, and go back up. They're trying to... Like, to me, it's like, if you're going to limit parking, why'd you take that sick green space? My kid...
green space,
My kids and my cousins have played in that green space out underneath those trees, looking at the bluff, the stars. I mean, it's I just don't know.
part of that natural.
Yeah, I saw a rat snake go up one of those pine trees. You know how they do where they kind of shimmy between the bark, and I was that breaks my heart.
I love that.
And I think that kind of speaks to what you were saying or touching on of the powers that be. Because I think it's easy to just toss out the W word and be like, oh, we're covering all of our like billionaire oligarchs.
Sure.
But it's a family of companies. You know, it's like a pretty intense little.
Yeah, I've actually said that it's we often want to say like them, or like we want to point the finger at somebody like they're doing this to us or something. But there's a Tim Dillon had a viewpoint on it that I thought was just hilarious when you talk about like the powers that be. Mm-hmm. And we always kind of look at them as like this kind of like shadowy, you know, organization that are making these handshake deals behind. Yeah. He said, but it's actually like it's more like benign than you think. It's just like it's a couple of dudes hanging out, having a drink, and they're like, yeah, you know, we should do that thing. And the other guy's like, yeah, you know, we can do that. I'll talk to my people.
I would love to be swayed to that point of view, because like I'm still in the like, oh, they're sinister.
Yeah, no, I'm like everything's monetary. Well,
Shadow Court. Shadow Court.
At first, I was really excited that dude bought Dog Patch.
Yeah.
And then like I was like, wait. Shit, the rest of the buffalo's going to try to go to this, and that's exactly what this is. Mm-hmm. It's just a money grab, and they're really wanting to try to. I think they want to charge more for everything down there.
They want to charge for a period. Which
and the locals aren't really making anything off of it anyway. Yeah. It's seasonal for them, and now the state wants to get involved and make this money off of it. And it's really going to – I mean, we can brag that it's one of the last undammed rivers, you know.
Yep.
And that's good. I know that'll still exist, but it'll still take away some of the – it just will to me.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, as I was saying, I think like that the little corner of Arkansas power – that is in charge of so much of the like where the direction the state heads with tourism and with real estate and with how business is managed. They don't love dirt roads. They don't love.
That's right.
They want all that infrastructure.
Yeah, they're embarrassed of our cultural identity, because our cultural identity is wrapped up in the fact that this is historically the second poorest state in the country. You know, like it's wrapped up in that dark shadow of history, and that dark shadow of history's end result is millions of acres of contiguous national forest, of like a depopulated delta that is like, though agriculturally productive and beautiful in its own right, like it's losing people by it's just hemorrhaging folks. And like my family is mostly from that part of the state, the like really intensely depopulated, impoverished, and like it's like it's the way to put it. And so like this little corner that does have this infrastructure and stuff, that it's been hard fought. They put a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of time into making this area relevant. But at the end of the day, I think those quote unquote powers that be, like as benign as that handshake deal might be, the underlining like ethical basis to it is that they kind of hate what Arkansas actually is. They would rather Arkansas be something that it's really hard to wrest that. And like I think that for me, it's like 2-3 generations back, there was enough space here that you could grow your own food, and like people eating naturally meant eating out of your backyard.
That's right.
You know,
it was different back then.
And then there's this gap period where, you know, IGA was the best grocery store in town. Sure. And like, you know, that was really grim, like in retrospect. And now we live in a Fayetteville in Northwest Arkansas that's got Whole Foods, you know?
Yep.
And so you have this like this arc effect where it's like, I think it's amazing that somebody who, you know, I would have grown up with in Lincoln or Prairie Grove or any of these like smaller subsidiary towns, like that did not have access to like one of the most basic tenets of human existence, which is decent food. You know, like their grandparents' generation could grow their own food and like sustain themselves off of it, and then their kids' generation are going to grow up in Northwest Arkansas with a Whole Foods. But where we were and where our parents were, and I think where the generation is of the people who are making a lot of these decisions, it was based in that like shame space of like, our best grocery store is an IGA. Like, we got to go forward. We got to go new. We got to like progress.
I remember when it was like a really big deal when a town got a McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, I joke. What size town you are in Arkansas is how many Sonics.
How many
you grew up
Sonics
with?
you got? Yes. Honestly, Sonic.
Sonic's a slut.
Sonic,
They're slutty like that.
Sonic might actually be a better reference point because there are so many
There's so many Sonic.
small town Sonics.
Yep, and it's the center.
Oh, man.
I mentioned Prairie Grove earlier. My high school metal bands were all centered around the Prairie Grove Sonic.
Oh yeah, totally.
We'd go pick up the
I've
dudes
been
from
there.
work. Yeah, it's like, okay, cool. It's 4:30. We can pick up our band members and go have practice in a barn in Prairie Grove. You know. And like that
Dude, that's hardcore.
That is hardcore.
That is hardcore.
That
is what we did.
And you're like, we didn't even try to do that. It just happened.
Yeah,
it's just where it was.
And the barn was on these people's property. That was a Civil War battlefield. Like it literally is from the their freaking
shots were fired from that area.
No, their living room floor in their main house, which is built in the 1840s or something, had these big hunks taken out of it. And they're like, that's where the Union Army rode through here.
Oh,
and I'm just like, this is very real. And, you know, I think that we all grew up adjacent to that conflict or like the shadow of that conflict in ways that are like, don't need to get down the rabbit hole there. But like, yeah, Prairie Grove is a 1 Sonic town. Fayetteville is a 2 Sonic town. What are we now, like a 6 Sonic town?
Yeah.
You know?
How many Sonics you got?
Now we're what, a 3 organic
Food.
supermarket
Yeah.
place.
Supermarket
we have
place.
3 different
Yeah.
organic supermarket places.
And one of the things I was going to point out too is like you were, and this is a bit devil's advocate on this, but like when you say that like they hate this place, I wonder, a lot of it I feel like is certain things have to happen for their goal to be enacted, like whatever the thing they're trying to do is. Like for instance, like, you know, we want to build this thing here, but we need a road to get to it. It only has a dirt road right now, but we actually need it to accept semi trucks for pickup.
Right.
So we really do need to get that road paved. And how are we going to do that? Through local municipalities developing
domain, you know.
Development. And so like I feel like there's when I talk about the benign side of it, it's like, yeah, we're just trying to put this farm here, and I'm not trying to get all of our trucks. You know how much tires cost for these semi trucks. They have to go down that dirt road. It's like there's some validity behind that. The people who are pushing the sprawl, but you know.
See,
pros and cons.
That's why Hinesville rules. It's all dirt roads and little creeks and like kind of crappy poor people, like just their houses, and some of it's trashy, and it's like I'm surprised they didn't go there. I really thought for years they would hit Hinesville. And you do have some big bougie houses out there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, those people are staying there. They're not selling. They're not. It's like a little place back in time to me. And what's funny is all the bike scenes came, and now they're all gravel biking out there.
Oh, gravel bikes.
Like, and it's hot. There's a big trail. There's like a big loop that goes out there. There's like, you can get on this little app and go out to Hinesville and go through all their dirt roads. And I'm thinking, wow, maybe they'll preserve it in that sense that if the bikes want to use it that way, you won't have that. Even if they do develop it, maybe they'll leave most of it.
Yeah, it's funny.
Well, in that way, then, like what we're saying, like I think both of those things can be true. You know, that like they might not. They are uninterested in reviving or like reimagining the Arkansas of our grandparents and great grandparents. That the Arkansas where everybody can grow their own food, and like that there's like this mean access to natural like spaces and intact green spaces. Like they may not necessarily want that, but they do believe in people's quality of life. And whether I agree with their definition of quality of life, whether that means like, you know, having more industry, having the paved thing, having a Whole Foods, like whether that is in alignment constitutionally with what I consider to be quality of life is kind of irrelevant, because at the end of the day, like somebody will benefit materially from that in a way that might allow them to enact their vision. And so like the kids that are growing up around here right now that are transplants or generational people who live here, either way, they are seeing a window into a life that's not as hard as the one we came up in. You know, that's not as starved of access. That's not as starved of these things. And I think that like, and I think that like, I try to leave room in my heart for that to be like, okay, so maybe this is completely out of alignment with my vision, but is somebody's happiness like who am I to try to dictate that, you know? And I think that like that from a philosophical standpoint, it hurts, and every little turn, every developed thing hurts. And then I also like am drinking my oat milk that I bought, you know, and it's like it's
at that Whole Foods.
Yeah, or you know, I go to O&F for everything I possibly can.
Shout out O&F.
But who, you know, who remembers the O&F that was on Dixon Street?
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that was the best one.
Yeah,
it was the best one.
It was the best one.
It was the best one.
And so like I think that we can like have rose-colored glasses in the rear view and be like, that was great and all, and still leave room for the fact that like a future isn't by definition bad. Development doesn't have to be by definition bad, even if it's like out of alignment with what I personally think. And I think that's where a lot of us feel so much pain, is not like, oh, it's developing, but oh, it's developing into this way that just makes us like everywhere else, you know, that just kind of that we are getting
we don't want to lose the identity, because I think that it's easy to lose identity whenever you know, like there's like pictures of like you know, a place where restaurants would be, fast food restaurants, and you would take that picture and you could call it any city in America, you know,
anywhere USA,
anywhere USA, right? That's what I was thinking. And so like we just don't want that to happen. And I think that, you know, speaking on Fayetteville, one of their one of the city code laws was about sign height. Like you couldn't do a sign over
billboards
over a certain height.
Not a damn one.
Funny enough, talking about Cracker Barrel, that was one of the reasons that Fayetteville did not have a Cracker Barrel, was because they had to have, that was a corporate mandated sign height,
right? Like, you know, a massive one.
Yeah, like it had to
funny,
be that.
As soon as you get to Johnson Springdale,
it's right there.
It does look much more anywhere USA once you get north of Fayetteville, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I get bummed when people come here and they've been here for a minute and they're like, oh man, it's just like Austin, and I'm like, dang it, I'm not nothing to knocking Austin. Austin's Austin, but Fayetteville, you used to not be able, you wouldn't say that back in the day.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, and also I think that I've heard somebody else talk about the Fayetteville Austin comparison of like,
the Texas kids love saying that.
Well, it's like, is Austin a big Fayetteville, or is Fayetteville a small Austin?
That's what I always wonder. Like, what are you saying?
You know what I mean?
It's a really interesting one-to-one comparison too, because I feel like it could only happen in a world where we share a border with Texas. Because like I've spent Texarkana, and I've spent a fair amount of time in Asheville this last month and a half or so.
Oh yeah.
And I do remember having all those moments, or even like a Santa Cruz, where I'm like, this is far more like Fayetteville. Yeah. Than Austin is. I think the only reason there's an Austin comparison whatsoever is that Texas has 6 or 7 cities over 1 million people.
Yeah,
you know,
dude, seriously.
Right.
Yeah,
Comparison.
It's like I don't know.
Austin's the Fayetteville of Texas, I guess.
In its own way. Yeah, that's a way to put it.
But it's hard to compare the two.
But it's hard to be the Fayetteville of Texas when the Little Rock of Texas would be every other city. You know, like our biggest city is like 100,000 people. Little Rock is tiny. And then you take that and try to match that against like Houston, Dallas.
Dallas, plans down.
You can fit. Yeah, sure. There are more people in Dallas by 2 or 3 times than the whole state of Arkansas. You know, like it's one city that has more people by a double amount than this place. So I think that's like.
I mean, some counties in states like out populate us.
Yeah.
You know.
No, by a long shot.
By long shots.
And I don't think people understand that when people are like, oh yeah, Arkansas kind of like this place. And I'm like, well, it's not really like anywhere else in the South, because we don't I mean, like, really only Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas have the rate of like poverty and population density and the things that we have. And so when it gets compared to like your Texas's, Tennessee's, it's just not a valid one-to-one, because like even if you're in middle of nowhere Tennessee, you're an hour tops from a major interstate. Whereas like in Arkansas, that is not true. You know, like you could be
you can get buried.
Deep dark Ouachita's, you are 7 hours from a city of 1 million people. You know,
That's
so it's
true.
like it's a different experience fundamentally on that level.
Yeah,
I think I love that the most. Like, if you're in town and you're just fed up and you just, like you said, go to Buffalo, the National Forest, whatever you want, just get lost. Just go
Get lost.
lost.
Yeah. Get lost.
Well, it's don't do this, kids. But when we were teenagers, we would buy the case of beer, and then you'd head south until you hit dirt. And like once we were in National Forest roads, we would just drink until we couldn't drive anymore, and then that's where you camped. And like
there's that many spots.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that way,
and it's not safe. It's not our reality anymore, but it is. It's a testament to how quickly this place grows, and I feel like maybe that's what I'm hearing in all of our complaints is like it's not necessarily growth or how you grow all the time, but the pace here is just something we can't get used to. Like there's no I'm kind of acclimated to this level of development. It's like I left for 2 months and the block I partied on in high school is demolished, and someone from Palo Alto built a bunch of tall skinnies.
Yeah, what is it like? I said, the right side of Whittam, you go down right down Whittam, and it's just all condos.
Yeah,
like all. And I was telling somebody like back in the day, it was like a giant house. You had 6 rooms, but that was 6 different little apartments.
Yep.
Or they might all come together
or
and
6
have a house
roommates
party.
Yeah,
they might have. They might have a house party or something. And there's really only just a couple of those left in town.
Yeah.
Really, the only thing left is the fraternities that are original.
Yeah.
Most of those have been redone too.
And they're changing those too.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're knocking
all
those suckers down.
All the sororities are knocked down and redone. It blows my mind. But I that's why I support, like, local restaurants. Like, yeah, I have to go to McDonald's, have a kiddo, whatever. But I love just going right back to those same places. And I miss all the old places, too. We had a lot of good restaurants back then.
I ate an embarrassing amount of Teptai, if anybody's wondering.
Oh, yeah,
Teptai. I hit Teptai like every couple days. It's bad.
So good. It's so bad,
only
but
3 things I order.
So good.
It's delicious. Yeah.
What do you get there?
I rotate out, but I'm usually like getting the Thai restaurant staples of your like coconut soup on my one day, and
their
then like
coconut soup.
Their pad thai is darn
else.
good, and they've got that Thai fried rice. But like I just cycle in and out of kind of the staples that you can kind of get anywhere. But they're just extra good.
They're solid.
Yeah,
no,
extra
solid.
good when you can go down there and sit in the little duck pond.
Yeah, it's tiny and it's
duck
just
pond is so sick.
I love the little quaintness of places like that. It just feels comfortable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with skateboarding, but we love Thai food.
That's all right. I know a lot
hell
of dudes that are down with that place for sure.
I know. I've skated there many times.
Many a time.
Many times. So yeah, I wanted to get back into music a little bit.
Sure.
When you talk about this pride in Arkansas, I feel like I haven't obviously been to any of your tour dates, but do you like promote Arkansas, talk about Arkansas, talk about home whenever you're doing the shows?
Yeah.
And like, how do people react to
well, because I feel like traditional music forms, whether it's country music or cumbia, like an aspect of the singing, an aspect of my like specific case of my music, like the whistling and stuff. Like I first learned diaphragm control, which is like all of singing, from doing owl calls, and I first learned to whistle from my dad impersonating cardinals, whippoorwills, and stuff.
For sure.
So like all of the singing style that gets incorporated into my specific like strain of country music is a literal product of landscape. It's like it is intertwined with soil and rocks and roots and stuff. And so like even if I never mentioned Arkansas by name in a single show, it would be there. And that's what makes it different in its own way, I guess, is that like that reciprocal relationship with landscape is something that I like deeply value and aspire towards, even though like we're all divorced from it, having like grown up with frozen food and chicken nuggets and TV and stuff. Yeah. But like, so I make a joke pretty much every show that like, I'm sorry you showed up to my Learn Too Much About Arkansas TED Talk, but you're here now.
I love that.
Because it's like, again, it's going to be in the music. And I also firmly believe that like as this country sort of like reconciles with its history and starts to like have a hard pivot in terms of like people really reassessing like what their identity means within American history and within like the American economy and stuff.
What's your contribution to it?
Yeah, like, well, where do you fit in the arc of history? Because like history is not some static dead thing. We live it every day.
Constantly.
And I think that's easier for us here to be like, oh, there's a Trail of Tears marker. Oh, there's a battlefield. Oh, there's a plantation. Like everything that like is ugly about that history isn't swept under the rug here. It's not distant. It's like our blood. It's the ground we walk on. And so like, I think that, yeah, that history shows up and people are trying to find their own place in understanding where they're from and what that means. And I think you can learn everything you need to know about American history, and especially that like more radical take on American history that is more centered towards the plight of working people and indigenous people and the diaspora of the formerly enslaved and like the immigrants and everything that makes America not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant conservative. Like that whole core way of like reevaluating American history really can be learned about just saying like, oh, Arkansas was founded the same year as the so-called Indian Removal Acts. Like our territorial distinction from Oklahoma is built on the expansion of slavery.
Right.
You know, our entire our way of life is defined by the shadow of the Civil War. And like, so I think that like, yeah, when I'm able to draw the comparisons of like, hey, 1836, 1860, like those numbers, like they don't just go away. Like they're in our day-to-day lives. They're in how little we get paid. You know, like there's so many aspects of like everywhere USA life that is still based in the Trail of Tears and enslavement and Civil War. And I think that Arkansas specifically, like the fact that people in this country can't find Arkansas on a blank map. You know, like if you
blows my mind.
Yeah,
it's like one of the easiest, most distinguishable to me. It's just a square,
right? And the expansion of slavery into the rest of the South, the expulsion of the southeastern Native population, and like the worst aspects of war and expansion, like all of that is rooted. Like people don't know where Arkansas is, and that whole story is Arkansas. You know, like Arkansas's entire existence is based in those things, and not just based in those things, but made empire happen. Like everything that happens afterwards only happens because Arkansas was founded the way it was. And so I think that it's not an accident that like you're seeing something really like purposeful and, dare I say it, sinister about like American programming and American historical propaganda is that like you don't know where Arkansas is, and yet there would not be Sea to Shining Sea, Manifest Destiny.
That's right.
Without this. Like, that's not an accident. That's very much on purpose. And so I think that's another way that Arkansas enters the chat, so to speak.
Arkansas is a very old territory, I guess, an area. Like there's a few towns around here that were there before we became Arkansas that are still there.
Oh, sure.
And like you said, shit was real. And like, it's kind of weird because you get to Arkansas and you got the mountains, and then as soon as Oklahoma hits and you got the plains, that's where everybody was just kind of pushed towards.
Yeah, forcefully expelled. Like, you know, at gunpoint.
Yeah, because it was pretty up until that point, and it was like, oh, it's just wide open. You go, because there were so many resources in Arkansas. It was more like, you know, when everybody ran out west and staked a claim, Arkansas had a lot of resources, like whether it was just timber or, you know, simple minerals and stuff like that. And so,
or, you know, I think a key one is what you're saying. Like there's not very many state lines defined on ecological bases, and that's one of the things that makes Arkansas and Oklahoma's border so like incredibly fascinating and unique. Yep. And also, we should point out that Arkansas and Oklahoma were the same territory.
They were, like, exactly.
You know, Arkansas with an SAW territory included Oklahoma, but 1836 happens. They're expelling the entire indigenous population of the Southeast to make room for cotton plantations. Where do we draw that line? Well, on this side of the line, it's kind of green and moist. We can grow cotton. On this side of the line, it's a little bit wet, like gray and arid and heading towards the plains. We can't grow cotton here. This is not of use to the American imperial experience.
So we'll make it feel better, and we'll gift it.
Yeah. Gift, quote unquote. Yeah,
right, exactly.
Well, it opened up for a lot of the, I guess you could call them hillbillies, to file into the area. And I know you're talking about Fayetteville back in the day was dangerous. I remember stories about people saying, you didn't come up the square back in the day without your 6-shooter. It was just kind of wild. And that's all that, it was almost like that, okay, we have this area, but you can't grow any of the textile stuff that we need further south. So they kind of allowed like a land grab people to come in and just kind of homestead and they did. So
well, and I had a teacher once ask the classroom. He was like, "Why is Arkansas poor? Why do you live in the second poorest state in the country?" And like everyone was like, "Swamps in the east, mountains in the west." That was my answer. And he was like, "Nice thought, but no." And then there was like, you know, like just kind of scratching heads, and he just said out loud, "Oklahoma is why Arkansas was poor, because Oklahoma was tribally sovereign until 1907. That's when Oklahoma became a state." So like People, you know, I know. So you look at a map and you see like St. Louis,
Yeah.
Kansas City, Denver, straight line.
Straight line.
It's
Westward
yep.
expansion.
Yep.
You go further south, you got Jackson, Shreveport, Dallas, Santa Fe. That's or Albuquerque, excuse me. That's that straight line west. And what you don't have that. It's not like a Memphis, Little Rock, Fort Smith, Tulsa,
True.
Oklahoma City. You know,
It's kind of funny. We were talking about tour dates and routing.
Yeah.
Like
it's like that. Well, how did Manifest Destiny route its tour?
Route the
it
tour, yeah.
routed around the tribally sovereign land that was part of another country. So like, you know, the so-called Indian territories of eastern Oklahoma, that was again sovereign. It was not part of the United States of America. So people went around it, and that's why Arkansas, especially the western half of Arkansas, has historically been so depopulated and poor, is that like we don't have that benefit of empire that places like, you know, your Casey Mo's and Denver and stuff, like most people are not like those are shining metropolises at the center of the world, but they have more access historically than a place like Arkansas does.
Oh, yeah.
By the sheer basis of like wagon trains and like
Yeah.
westward expansion and stuff, where like we
Trains,
were
yeah.
skipped, you know, and like
Yep.
we were skipped because of the history of expulsion and civil war and slavery. And so like I think that that's another thing where people can start making those connections, is to be like, I'm Arkansas proud. I'm proud of this depopulation. I'm proud of these dirt roads. I'm proud of
Yeah,
all this.
right.
Where does that come from?
Where
You
does
know,
it
like
come from?
why
Yeah.
am I the beneficiary of millions of acres of contiguous national forest? And it's like once you start pulling apart those threads, the whole flag falls apart. You know, like, and it becomes very quickly apparent, like, yeah, I have a stake in this. I have a responsibility to this landscape, and I also have a responsibility to this history to not
Yeah.
just like sugarcoat it, you know?
Well, and that's kind of why I say like it's you know, the reality is the one you create. It's like the one like you do create the reality you live in, and I mean, if you're going to be that like positive force towards you know, new ideas, I think that there is some personal responsibility in that. I think you do that with your music though. You know,
that's kind of, I was going to say that to round it back to the question.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You know, that's how people get this dose of Arkansas, is that I will make sure in every way possible that like, yeah, you are aware you're hearing singing based in landscape, and what happened on that landscape is in the singing too. You know, like the reason I'm here as a person of entirely Scots-Irish settler identity that's been in Arkansas since the 1840s, you know, like I think that to shine a light on one, it's not like, oh cool, I've got this like pinprick of light that I get to shed on landscape, and everything around it just sort of like dissolves into darkness. Like you will see the whole room, you know, and like I think that's
great.
That's like powerfully liberating for people to see in their own landscape. So if I run in there and I'm talking about how much I like my snakes and waterfalls or whatever, that person in that
That's
room,
great.
whether they're from Eastern Kentucky or Eastern Texas or Eastern California, is going to like,
Yeah.
they're going to hear that and be like, well, what do I love about my landscape, and why do I have that access? And I think that that's like a catalyst towards a greater understanding.
Yeah.
Is there a particular, I was going to ask you this too, is there a particular spot that song is about? An area?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mentioned the word Ghost Hollow earlier. That was like at the edge of town, and now it's in town. But when I was 7 and moved up here from the Ouachitas, again, we moved onto like 20 acres that backed up on somebody else's 30 acres that backed up on someone else's 300. So we had this like intact like swath of woodland that was like technically part of Fayetteville, but you know, like we had there was wild turkeys and coyotes and stuff. Like it felt like I had a rural existence. I could walk to a Confederate cemetery and a public library at the same distance, you know? So like that whole way of being is definitely like enshrined in song. But when I was writing Snakes and Waterfalls, I thought about like being out on my back porch as a kid, and you could look across the valley and see the ridge tops and see like little pinpricks of light. And I was like, I wonder what little kid sitting on that porch looking back this direction and seeing my little pinprick of light. So like porch lights on distant ridges dark, you know, like that's literally my boyhood home growing up.
Great.
So it's like, yeah, I would say that, yeah, everybody has their own snakes and waterfalls or whatever. They've got their own spot that like speaks to them like that.
That's why I feel like I'm transported to a certain place that I
For
think
you.
of.
And I could say the same
and
thing.
that's why I wanted to ask, because I was like, it's got, you know, it's not just imagination you came
No,
up with.
it's
This
not
is
generic.
This is a personal experience.
Very personal.
And that's, I guess that's why it feels so real to me, because it's a personal experience. You can tell.
But it also has like that Arkansas texture that makes you feel like that was a place that I remember.
Sure.
You know, like it has it's real. it's real visual in that like you paint a picture of like Arkansas, like backwoods Arkansas, which is so great to embody into a piece of work. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you used the word embody too, because like that's what it feels like. It's like I'm not. A lot of traditional music is either like, oh, it's like a Civil War reenactment. We're all dressing up in a costume, you know, and like gonna go out there and and like that exists for a purpose, and like everybody needs theater, everybody needs entertainment. Like I leave that door very firmly ajar, because I think that like we need something that's like not all heady and like and all wrapped up and stuff. But then there's also the like, the part that is what you're used to hearing on the radio for country music, which is very much like essentially a truck commercial, you know, and like, and it's commercial in the capital C sense, that like it's meant to prey on your nostalgia. It's supposed to be like, oh, we're not using the term cane break to describe like an area of river cane and a river bottom in the specific like climactic, geographic, political experience that is Arkansas. It's like, oh, the dirt road and a duck blind could be anywhere.
What's that song? Like it's
you still
There I Ruined It. If you know what I'm talking.
Oh,
dude,
you
please,
still talk,
people look that up.
You still talk old. Do you know what I mean? Like just certain words people don't like use. I think you used Forsaken at one point. You use just certain words like that. To me, reminds me of like Arkansas. Reminds me of my mamaw, her singing all the Heavenly Highway hymnal book, stuff like that. It's just like that's what I feel like. Don't take this wrong, but when you get older, you could do a kids album. Just kill. It would just kill.
No,
it would kill.
It's high praise, dude. Seriously. Well, and I think again, like going back to that word embody, like I care about this music enough that like I'm willing to say again, this is my flesh and blood. It's my inheritance. It's what my grandparents sang and their grandparents sang. And I also like firmly did not want it. You know, like I wanted nothing to do with it when I was in Thunder Lizards.
But that's
I've been there doing that. Like I don't want to be my family. I don't want to do what they did. And then now when you get older, you're like, kind of a little bit of pride.
Sure.
And there's that
my accent's
knocking.
gone.
Yeah,
sure.
It's knocking like, hey, I still exist in here.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that I think it's just like this little kid that's still in there, like saying, hey, it was cool. It was kind of cool when you were a kid. And then when you're an angsty teenager, it wasn't as cool. And
And you learned what it's associated with. Like I didn't know where I was from until pretty late in the game, and I was like, oh my god. Like I remember I tried to go to college in Denver for a couple of years, and again another city with more people than the whole state of Arkansas.
Oh yeah.
And this girl walked into my room and she goes, "Oh, you're from Arkansas?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Where's your Confederate flag?" And I was just like, ... And I was like, am I supposed to have one?
Supposed to have one?
You're like, I'm from Fayetteville.
Yeah, I mean, again, my family's mostly from South Arkansas and like the eastern half of the Ozarks, and like they're not Fayetteville progressives by any stretch of the imagination. And so I did come to dig and be like, oh, you know, by my pedigree and personal history and where I live, like, am I supposed to have a Confederate flag? You know, it's
but that you know, to
straight stereotyping though. I mean, to an extent, but
deeply.
But they don't, and I know that goes back to Fayetteville being just a little different.
Well,
even
that's what I was gonna say is like your Fayetteville, the music that you generated in Fayetteville and then have transformed into the country music that you sing now, it's like it's influenced by it, and I feel like it's that's what you're taking, like the roots and the heritage and matching it and blending it with the punk part of you,
the lived experience,
you know.
Well, and I'd make this joke all the time that the stuff I was yelling in those bands, I'm just happen to be yodeling now.
That's
right. Like nothing has changed whatsoever in terms of like the content or presentation. And another way to look at it is that my punk music was influenced by country music.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
and
right.
Like, and then I'm kind of just like rounding back to what I actually know. And I was thinking about this earlier of like, when did I feel like the biggest poser in my life? Like when was I trying the hardest to be something that maybe I'm not?
Right.
And like,
right.
And it was like when I was a baby punk, when I was like trying
baby
so
punk.
like everything
baby
was
punk,
was like patches sewed on and like
totally,
you know, just utterly ashamed of the fact that my vowels were long, you know, like anything like that, where I was just like trying to bury it all. And I think that like it's necessary for us to go through that arc of identity to like figure out what's what.
I think so. I had a
find yourself, your family, and circle back around and figure out how you're gonna live with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, but I really do think that your music kind of it's such a unique presentation that it literally can't be compared to a lot of other things. Now I know I got turned on to Western as Fuck, and the collection that's generated with that, like damn, like when I saw you on there and then I started seeing others from that, I was like, wow, this is like a curation of like stuff like Nick.
Like
I was like
part of something.
Yeah, it's part of something.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this seems like, there's more out there.
Totally. It's not all just posers and patriots. There's like
totally
there's a smattering of people who are trying to embody.
And so with tours, do you you're probably coming across more of these people, and are you finding some like-minded people to do tours with? Is that how you've generated people that you tour with?
Totally. Yeah, I am so grateful to Western AF, by the way. Like I just talked to Mike on the phone the other day. Shout out Mike Fanata. But like they're great folks, and they like truly care about it in the way that like we do. And same with the Gyms on VHS folks, like all this like
Gyms on VHS,
the folks that
are
documentarians of this wave of performers. To not to like brag or name drop or nothing, but to like just kind of put it into context. Like I met someone like Sierra Farrell at a backyard party after some punker fiddle convention thing in the Pacific Northwest, playing like jazz songs in a crazy like frilly dress. A lot of the people on that channel, not like all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but a fair amount of them come from like the street performing, the world of like New Orleans and Austin and Fayetteville and stuff, like places of the world where you have enough access to relevance to be able to sort of like exist on the dregs, but you don't get to be a primary player. And a lot of like the folks in that canon that are getting like documented by these channels, they might have grown up with a certain connection to the music, but they weren't willing to sell themselves in this other very specific way to get famous, essentially. And so it's a lot of people who are sort of allergic to the limelight, but are passionate performers and actually like have done their homework and done a lot of like studying and hours of playing in the sun or the rain, And so a lot of these folks are my good buddies that like, I'm like, oh, you got your channel vid, or, for a minute there, I was sitting on the outskirts and being like, man, a lot of my buddies have these cool videos. Like I exist in this neat scene of like people actually like trying to do their homework and represent this as it's like true to form. I want to be a part of this. I want one of these things, and I had to like convince the Western AF guys to be like, hey, give me a shot,
I love it.
Just let me take a swing at it.
I love it.
I think that that speaks volumes to who we end up getting to surround ourselves by, like who is on Garhole Records, who I get to tour with. Like a good 8 out of 10 of these folks are people that are like subculturally or functionally related to what I came up doing. And like I think the subtext to all this is that like because of everything that's like bad or hard about Arkansas is like I had to leave to find this community, and I had to like travel for a bit to understand where I fit into all of it. But like getting to now come back and live in Northwest Arkansas and shoot arrows in my backyard and go go hunting for snakes in my spare time, like that kind of like coming around is really important, because I think a lot of the people that get documented by these channels like me were forced to leave home, and were forced to like leave their lived experience and leave their like embodied folk culture and sort of like ride out the street corners and the faraway places and do their best to like survive there. So I really have so much love for so many of the people that get documented by these channels, because not only they're like me in the sense that like maybe part of their journey or like their road to being a functional musician is similar, but they also like they care about where they're from enough to not get destroyed by it and to not get
and
like
still be themselves
and still be themselves. And so like I'm so impressed with so many of those folks. And every once in a while I catch up with somebody and they're like, so that's really just like your friend, like you guys have just had yard beers and like talked about the weather, and like your dogs have gotten in fights and stuff, and they're like that's like literally my friend.
normal life. It's become normal life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you know, you go to Nashville and it's like, hey, they're going to stick this band together. Somebody else does. It doesn't happen like you're talking about organically. Or like, to me, you're running around. That tells me how small, it's a small world. I've always said that. It's a small world. And you just never know who you're going to run into in the middle of nowhere.
It's true.
Well, and also speaking about, you know, you talked about Nashville and like how, and I mean, obviously everybody can make the comparison about Nashville and country music, and then add on tours,
and they will,
and they will, they definitely will.
Yeah.
And so, but like, you know, listening to the I would say this collective of musicians that you've kind of found yourself in, it's like more country than the country that they're trying to make in Nashville.
Precisely. Well, and for historical reference, I just want to say, like, the fact that Nashville is the center of country music is not like set in stone, preordained. You know, like
I know.
That was money.
Yeah. That was money.
It was money.
Yeah.
Because like in Springfield, Missouri, for example, they had the Ozark Jubilee, and that was supposed to be the direct competitor at the Grand Ole Opry. They had. You know,
Branson.
Yeah, I was gonna say they had Branson going for them. They even had the Carter family for a bit.
Yeah,
you know, like they
did.
And there was like Chicago was competing with the Barn Dance. You know, there's basically just a million Grand Ole Opries, and that's just the one that, like, by a combination of luck and money and persistence became the face of country music. And I really think that these channels have democratized traditional music forms, country music being the one that like we deal in the U.S., and like democratized it in the sense that the audience gets to decide what gets rewarded. And I think that's what you're touching on, is that like in Nashville, that is it's a bot culture. You know, it's a top-down decision.
It's funny that we just brought up that thing.
Oh yeah, we brought it back. Yeah,
they're pushing the culture they think's going to sell.
Somebody in a boardroom, whether it's benign or malevolent,
That's
whichever,
right.
made a handshake deal, and they were like, "You kid are going to be a star because we can plug you into these radio stations, we can plug you into this exposure, et cetera, et cetera." And that's how country music worked up until essentially the rise of YouTube and these channels. And so like, I really feel that the democratization of country music, it reflects something really cool and authentic and beautiful about the performers that are featured. And it also says something about the audience, and something really important about the audience is that the audience decides. And like, I personally don't think that anything that you're seeing in terms of anyone's success in this country, especially if they're white, is purely meritocratic. Like, I don't think it's just merit that gets anybody anywhere. Like, I think that's like a whole other conversation. But with this music specifically, you get something close. And you get something close because it's views and exposure and who watches what and comments on what and who's reacting out there, that, or I guess, you know, out here in the real world, that determines who gets that thing. It's not just about like privilege and access and sort of your preordained seat and sort of the Nashville table. Like, there is no table. It's just all of us sitting out on the lawn.
Yeah.
And like, whoever gets up and is loud and interesting enough will get people's attention. And I think that like that aspect of meritocracy that like shows itself in the internet, like YouTube era, and like who's gotten noticed in the last few years, is becoming less true with like ads and the fact that these people are noticing how profitable something like a Western AF or a Jim's on VHS could be.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's all audience reaction. I think that speaks to like an intelligence and a like quality to people who are seeking out this music that I've always believed in, that I've always been like, these, like, I deserve better music to listen to, just like anybody else might who's tired of the Nashville like scam, you know, is what it is. And I think that says, it speaks volumes about like people who seek out these music forms that I think is so cool and good, and that like makes me feel even better about participating in it, is that like what little success, or use the F word earlier, you know, whatever fame I've got, you know, like that's all been bestowed upon me. I would like to think from people reacting to what I'm doing, and not necessarily me being entrenched and favored and part of the good old boy ring or whatever. And like, that's why, that any of that came forward. So like, yeah, to round it out, I think that what's so neat about these channels is that it is like, it's real-time reaction. It's real-time democratic, like, you know, input. And it also like demands more of the performer, where you can't just be some scam artist shill talking about anywhere USA, that duck blind, that dirt road that could exist anywhere. Like, you really have to embody and be yourself in a way that, like, if you're not, people smell it. They see it on that screen. They can suss out, like,
that's right.
Oh yeah, you're just all hat, no cattle.
Right. That's right.
Like,
that's right.
I don't claim to have any cattle, so it's like,
so you can't get me.
Yeah, so you can't get me. But
yeah, it's like you're true. You know, you can't be called out in your music because it's like it's so true to form.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So do you get like there's two places that I'm curious about how shows go. Mm-hmm. First, since we're so close to it, Nashville. Like,
okay.
Do you do Nashville bookings?
Yeah, we played at Basement East last, and it was sold out, totally blasted out. Really insane to me because, like, again, that's a town I have unsuccessfully played on street corners. I've played for tips in the corner of a little greasy honky tonk. I've played like backyard parties in Nashville. So, like, to have the full circle of that, it was like pretty profound.
That's
like
great.
Pretty insane.
That's great.
And also, like, yeah, I no matter what room I'm in, I don't pull the punches. I just, like, maybe don't throw them at your face. And so a place,
gotcha. You know where you're playing.
Yeah,
you know
it's like I knew where I was
playing.
playing and continue to. And and as such, I get to like speak into the dark heart of the beast.
I love it.
And
I
like
love
that,
it. That's what I was talking about.
That feels good. So, like,
it's like you're bringing real country to Nashville,
right? To a place that's like largely trying to avoid real country. It's like, I would ask
Cracker Barrel country,
exactly. And I would
Cracker Barrel country.
I would love, just as like a thought experiment, and no one speak this out loud in this room or like at home. Just like, this is just for your head. Like, what's the difference between country and Americana? Just think about it.
Absolutely.
And then what's the difference between rap and hip hop? Yeah. Like, one is really rooted in an experience and an economic strata and like a geography and a time and place that like is real.
Yeah.
And then one can kind of be expanded and be as gray or like fit as many definitions as you want it to. Americana means nothing. Hip hop means nothing. It's like
fair point. Yeah.
The idea that like, violence and misogyny and all the like things that people
must
complain
be tied into rap or something.
It must be tied into rap, or it must be tied into country. Like, what you're saying is not like, oh, that's intrinsic to the genre, or that's intrinsic to the type of music. It's intrinsic to the economic, cultural, geographic experience.
Tied to it.
It's like you don't get to escape from it. And I think that that's what people see in rap and country music and are recognizing, is the fact that they have so much crossover and like have so much in common. There's like an algorithmic study where they tried to find how many repeated words are in music, and so they ran pop rock, classic rock repeats words constantly.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
you know what had
absolutely.
the two genres with the least repeated words? Rap and country.
No way. That's great.
No, I can totally see that.
Yeah. Okay, second city though. Second city.
Yeah. Okay, and the other and maybe not even city. You tour international.
Mm-hmm.
I always think that's a trip.
Yeah.
No one's more tripped out than me that I have not been to another country for fun.
I
have never been on vacation in another country.
Right.
Just so everybody knows, this country music has only been played.
That's great.
For that specific purpose.
So what, I guess is a different phrase question. Like, what show have you done internationally that's been the most interesting?
Wow. Okay.
Like really took you back or shocked you being there, experiencing you playing music there?
One is sticking out.
Yeah, sort of say you can find punk and metal here, and you can find it in Europe easily.
Totally. Yeah.
But taking your style of country over there, to me, I would think they would stereotype some of that.
So
unless they're open to it.
There were some moments. For example, with a past band, not with my music, we played in Bavaria.
Okay.
And we were in some South German pub in the middle of nowhere. I don't remember the town. I feel bad. But we went in, and there behind the bar was a fat rebel flag. And I was like, weird. What does this mean? And I was like all puzzled because I was like, okay. Like, I know what I'm getting into. And I walked up there and I was like, hey, so I'm from one of those stars. On that why is this here?
Why is this?
Yeah,
Gotta know.
like, why is this here? And he is like, well, we on League with Dixie. And I was like, okay. And then like,
Whoa.
and I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, you know, like we believe in what Dixie believes in. And I was like, oh, you're Nazis. Oh, okay. Like,
Now
whoa.
I understand.
I
what
just
you
understand.
mean.
I kind of
Yeah.
thought it was going to be one of those things where like we just want to be country.
Yeah,
and they don't understand.
No. It was explicitly they couldn't fly an SS flag, so they flew the rebel flag. Yes.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying. So
that's crazy.
that is the
Damn.
association. So that's outside of the South. And then just a couple weeks ago, I was in North Carolina, and this dude was talking to someone else, and he's like, "Well, you know, I fly the rebel flag," and like the people kind of nod, and I'm like, "Oh, what's he gonna say next?" Like ... This could be terrible. And he goes, "So I pick up trash," and I was like,
Oh,
huh. And then he's like, yeah, you know, like I'm proud Southerner. I make sure nobody leaves trash behind. So I picked up 21 tons of trash last year with my girlfriend and all this stuff. And I was like,
that's legit.
I was
That's
it's like, wow, dude, I wish a lot of people could hear what you just said and not what the, like, you know, the neo-Nazis in Germany think, you know.
Like that is real country pride.
That's very okay. So back to the question though.
Yeah. Sure.
So,
Go ahead.
So in that sense, being one of those stars on that flag for worse and not better for sure, I played in Belfast, which is my family is old settler stock. Before the Civil War, I can't find any relatives. I have no input into my genetic existence. Like everyone I'm related to has been here since before the Civil War. Like I don't have any recent immigrants. I don't have any indigenous American that's been here since day one. Like it's just colonial stock, you know, like people that arrived in the 17 and early 1800s. And the only thread back I have is someone named Andrew Riley, who was born in Belfast, Ireland in 1760 something. And so we were playing in Belfast, and I had been like around every corner expecting to hear the ancestor of the Southern accent. You know, like we're in Scotland, we're in Wales, we're in England, we're in Ireland. I was like, any minute now, I'm going to hear somebody who's got something aspect to their speech that sounds like my family, you know?
Yep.
And it was in Belfast where I was expecting it the most, because I was like, it's
got to be here.
It's got to be here. You know, like the Rileys are from Antrim. And then I was just slowly realizing, like, man, maybe a couple little A's or O's or something, but like it's not here. Like there is no ancestor that I'm hearing to the Southern accent. And then it clicked in Belfast where I was like, it's missing half the story. There's no Africa. Like the reason that no one sounds like this, that sounds like the ancestor of my dialect, is the ancestor of my dialect is from two different continents.
Right.
And that dialect was formed in a cultural and economic experience that was very harsh and very violent. And like that historical melding created a hybrid culture. And that's what to be Southern is like we're inherently hybridized. We're not Anglo-Saxons. You know, like we're mostly of the Celtic diaspora of the war-torn South that intermingled and integrated with Native America and with the diaspora of the formerly enslaved. And that like hybridization, I was suddenly just like, I'm so proud of that. I am so proud of what it means to be Southern in that sense.
Great.
Like to be a star on that flag doesn't have to mean like the smoky guns and the chains and the gunpoint, you know, like evacuation from your homeland. Like that can also mean like, despite all that this hybrid experience exists, this hybrid culture exists, and my speech is like a testament to that. And I had that like click in Belfast on that like last day of tour, and I was just like, this is going to be one of the trippiest shows of my life, just like suddenly realizing this aspect to myself that like maybe was obvious and like understood in a certain way, but like I don't know, we played some rowdy cool shows, we played some weird ones and like weird little methy back towns of like industrial England that were like super strange. And this Belfast show was not particularly well attended.
Sure.
It was not packed. It was not full of like diehard country music fans. We didn't even have the full band. It was just me and Grant playing. And even then I was just like, this show is important because this is my only thread back. You know, like I think so many people in the US can speak to some like recent ancestor or something where they can be like back to their country of origin, to their continent of origin, to like some aspect of their identity that is outside of the like white colonial settler identity. And in that moment I was like, this is as close as I'll ever get to it, is like is in
you're right
in that place in Belfast, Ireland. And so Yeah, we've only played in the UK and Canada outside of here as this band, but yeah, something about that Belfast show and being like close to
having that
thread.
epiphany, basically.
Yeah, having that epiphany and being like, this is as close as I'll get to knowing where my blood comes from. Like, this is as close as I'll ever get to having a like grip on my ancestry that's not like South Carolina, Alabama, you know.
I'm the same way. I don't know. Like you said, they came over 1700s at
Yep.
some point and just went through the South from Georgia on.
Yep.
But as far as that goes, somewhere Ireland, Scotland, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yep.
I mean, just looking at each other, I'm like, you're probably Scots, Irish, Southern, just like me. You know?
I just kind of came to the realization it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
My mama and my papa and my great grandpa, they're all from Arkansas. They're homesteaders or they were sharecroppers, and so I know that's as far as I'm going to go. And so like you said, I was like, it's not one particular thing. It was them coming across and lived experience. What culture you're in, you know, poverty hit them hard.
Yeah.
My papa says he went and picked up my mama on the first date on a horse.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
I'm like, okay,
Love it.
that's legit. So, and I do know where an old Magar farm is, but we don't own that property anymore. So
Yeah.
I'd love to go out there and go through the old homestead and stuff that was out there. But
Totally.
Yeah.
but I'm like you. I just never went. I kind of knew, okay, Scotland area, whatever, Ireland, but it was pointless to kind of like really dig because it's not really what formed you or what you should
Sure.
be.
It's so far back there that, like, you know, we're not as, like, Southerners that have been here since the 1700s. I think that the word, like, indigeneity, it could be thrown out there, especially, like, people who are trying to make a political statement about, like, essentially white Americans. And, like, I fundamentally disagree with that assertion. I think we're naturalized.
Yeah.
Like, we've been here long enough that, like, we know the names of trees. We know what the dirt smells
For
like,
sure.
you know?
Yep.
And it's, like, part of us. But most of my kin, at least, aren't living. They're living like their great-great-great-grandparents live here. Like, you know, I know that. I know that my great-great-great-grandparents are buried somewhere in South Carolina.
Yes.
But we're not living like our great-great-great-grandkids are going to live here. And I think that's where you start to cross the line from, like, naturalized to something that's, like, more embodied and more true and more, like, loving to the landscape. And I think that, like, we'll get there if we are given enough time and, like, self and inter-educate each other and stuff. But, like, until then, yeah, I think that, like, there's a reason that we look back to Europe because we feel in some small part of our minds, like, Arkansas is all we've ever known for generations, but, like, you know, what was back there, because I know that this is not where we started. And I think that that's, like, can be a liberating next point to be like, it's so far back there that we'll never find where we started, you know, like, and so, like, we need to start anew in this third weirder thing that we currently inhabit.
And I actually think that what you got to do in Belfast was actually you got to take what we've turned into and show it.
Wow, a really good way to put that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Full circle, baby.
Yeah, you got to, because I think that there is this, you know, especially internationally. I know you've witnessed this too. Is this viewpoint of Americans, and I think that getting to kind of show original music to the world that is authentic is showing that what, like, you went into that place and saw that rebel flag. And you're saying, like, hey, I'm from that area, and I'm not that. Yeah. I'm way more than that, and you're going to hear it through my music.
Totally.
You know? So, like, I feel like, you know, it's such a blessing that you're able to show other people, like, what a real...
It's what happens when they threw you in the melting pot.
Yeah, it's what the melting pot did to you. It hardened you into a real American, but it's like an American of real new world value. And I think that that's something that, you know, we look back on history and say, like, you know, like, where's my part in it? You talked about what your part is in this, and, like, I think you're doing it. I think you've done it, and I think that, you know, I've actually talked to a couple of people that are, you know, working on projects, and they're trying to find themselves, or, like, trying to find identity. And I think that, you know, I was talking to somebody, I don't want to shout him out, but, like, we were talking about, like, personal, like, you know, he wanted to make his work be more himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you have to do it. You have to make it yourself for it to be you. And when you carbon copy things, you're just trying to fit a mold.
Yep.
And I mean, your music, we've talked about all this, like, you know, skate adjacent, punk inspired, in your bloodline. You've put all of this stuff together to make one unique thing.
Synthesized, if you will.
Sure.
It takes a little
but
while.
organic in the
Distilled.
same.
Yeah,
Distilled. There we go. There, that's better.
I think it's
Love
good
it.
though. It takes a while, and I always try to encourage young kids in skating, like, it's gonna take a while. Don't rush into adulthood. Don't rush into being.
It just doesn't happen overnight.
Just let it all come to you. I swear you'll get you some humility and be humble and then go forward, and you will find yourself.
And have some experiences.
Yeah.
Experience.
You gotta have
some
some lived
things,
experience.
you know?
We can't be all Rodney Mullen out of the box. You know?
That's right. Right.
It's never going to happen.
Well, and these experiences form you, you know. And I mean, like, I think of, man, I can't break away from this vision of you in Prairie Grove at the Sonic, going to a barn to play punk, and that being an influence on the music that you play today. It's like, without those instances, you wouldn't. Would you be the musician you are today?
No, like, categorically no. And I think that like, yeah, what you were saying about, like, the younger folks and, like, trying to encourage people to, like, to have a little patience and a little for lack of a better word, faith in, like, in time to work its magic, and just sort of, like, just chill as much as you can, and, like, kind of lean into what you know to be true, and then you will exist in that trueness. You will be that person.
That's
and
right.
I think that, like, with music, with skating, with all this stuff, like, I think what people end up responding to is style, you know? And, like,
absolutely.
I'm not doing anything that doesn't have a precedence in style, or, like, a precedence in a certain way of living. It's just, like, it's distilled in a personalized way.
Sure.
And I think that that's, like, what I encourage for anybody who's, like, trying to come up in any sort of creative pursuit, because, like, skating's athleticism, but it's just, I mean, like, it's an
expression of art form.
Yeah,
I know some dudes that
agree.
aren't athletic that, like you said, they look so good doing it though.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And
Yep.
whereas I was raised in a sporting family, you know, I can't.
Don't got it.
I don't
Don't
have
got
it.
it.
Yeah. I like have a cruiser board that every once in a while I'm like, okay, it's a nice flat parking lot. I can, like, get going fast on this or something.
If you take a skateboard on tour, it will be used sometime.
Yeah, I mean, I would use it in the, like, the Best Western parking lots and
Yep.
just do laps, because that was, like, the closest I could get to
That was the
exercise
gym.
during the course of the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I would just say that, like, that expression, that physicality, whether it's on a ramp or in a mosh pit or whatever it's going to be, like, having that physicality and connection with your creativity, like, not a lot of people's art forms get to do that. My doodling and drawing and stuff, fun is all hell. Yeah, it's great and all, but, like, there was nothing physically embodied about it, nothing physically connected or, like, expressive about it. And I think that's what makes music so cool and makes skating so cool, is that, like, this aspect of self is something that you can, like, act out and run out and, like, and physically do. And I think that that's something that, like, people respond to. And all that to say, like, I just encourage anybody that's, like, trying to find their own way in this to just be patient and to live as if what you're doing is, like, a secondary embodiment of how you're living, and not, like, oh, I work at Taco Bell, but, like, I'm a composer in my free time. It's like, no, like, you want your compositions, you want your classical music to taste like sour cream.
That's
you
right.
know?
That's right. Use it. Use your experiences.
If you're a dirt road kid, your skating should be dirt road. You know, like, if you're a kid from any manner of circumstances, like, don't be afraid to embrace where you actually are from and what you actually do, and also don't be afraid to, like, to try to tell people about it or to learn more about it or like embody that. Because again, like I didn't want anything to do with this stuff. Like I hated country music at a point in my life.
Right.
Like,
I did too.
I
grew up on it, but then hated it.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, I mean,
Same.
some of my earliest memories are hearing old warbly Southern singing. And what did I hate most at age 16? Old warbly Southern singing. You know, and then it's like
now you love it.
Now, I love it so much I can't stop.
You know, it's like broccoli as a kid. You know, you didn't want to eat it, and then now you like will get it in every meal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ooh,
Roast it, smoke it. I don't care. I'll
That's
eat it all.
right. That's right. Well, man, we are kind of hitting on a natural ending time around
I'm
2
gonna tell
hours.
a story though.
Yeah.
So I was staying at Kyle's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
Me and the wife, we go every year. We were going every year, and we brought our kid, and they were asleep. And I was like, I'm gonna get up, and I'm gonna go down to the swimming hole, and I'm gonna fish.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going down that thing, and I just hear someone whistling their ass off, big time. And I go down the hill, and it's you and a lady and a little dog. And I was like, morning. And I was like, I think that's who I think it is. But I didn't want to be like a fanboy and dork out. So I just kind of fished, and you kind of got your stuff and took off. And I was like, damn, I kind of interrupted their morning thing. But it was super early, and it was like it was one of those things like
That's awesome.
I run into people in the middle of nowhere. It's Arkansas for
That's
you.
Arkansas
Totally.
for you.
Yeah.
But I was stoked because I was like, I hold that place deep in my heart.
Down
Just
at
a
Castle
heart-
Bluff?
Yeah. And to see you down there, I was like, it just made sense. Your music makes more sense from little interactions
And,
like
and,
that. People
and
don't
down
know.
there whistling too.
Yeah,
I mean,
dude. Well, the acoustics down there are a trip.
Are a
man.
trip. It's true.
It's great.
Yeah, that's great.
That's my story.
That's
Dude,
super
that's
cool.
great. That's a great story. Nick, where can people find you? Tell you want to plug any tour dates, anything you got coming up?
All over that World Wide Web.
World Wide Web,
yeah.
internets.
Yeah. I mean, even on Spotify, it lists your tour dates
Yeah,
these days.
it does
so-
now.
That's right.
If you listen to it, it'll go tour in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and every 1,000 plays, I can buy like a bag of chips or something. So,
There we go.
you know,
So if we take it one
It's that
takeaway.
bad?
Go.
it's that bad. It's
Go.
like 0.001.
Yeah, it is 0.001. Yeah, that's right.
0.001 cent per stream. So
I
So
was gonna go down there and
listen
look,
to a
y'all.
lot of Nick Shoulders on Spotify.
The man's got over 250,000
no one's
freaking
more
monthly
tripped,
listeners.
no one's more tripped out about this.
That
than
sounds
I
crazy,
am.
huh?
Yeah, that's nuts.
It
it's
is.
really nuts.
It is. I mean, it's. We're glad it happened to you. I mean,
hey,
we really are.
I remember that little punk kid playing on Dixon Street all the time, and
Yep.
it's a trip to me, man.
no one's more tripped out than I am. Like I said, I like wake up some days and I'm like, oh, that's real. I'm
That
living it.
happened.
Yeah. Or wake up in some city and you're like, so I've never been here before and it's sold out. Like, what does that mean? You know, like it's really,
Yeah.
it's a privilege and a pleasure as I try to continually remind myself. Cause as soon as you lose gratitude, it's
right.
you should just do something else.
You should quit right
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
You should.
So yep, stay gratuitous and
Your music will get crappy if you're not got gratitude. I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anybody listening, thanks for hanging with us. Go check out some Nick Shoulders
Thanks for
music
having me.
online. Nick, thanks for being here, dude.
For sure.
It's great to
Stoked.
catch back up.
Yeah, truly. And
Yeah.
now I'll try to beat those thunderstorms home.
Oh, dude, yeah. It's it's.
I felt like kind of a
heavy out
vague
there.
rumble. I was like, I think that's
It's
thunder.
time.
I think it's time.
we got the natural
The spring.
alarm clock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, thanks everybody. See you next time.
Good night.
See you next time.
Later.
Wow.